drama queens and heroes acting out there on a silver screen. Come grab a seat, popcorn is on me.
Camera speed.
Sound production, take one.
Hello, welcome to Meet Me at the Movies. And I've got to say, during the holiday season, there are tons of movies that are themed around the Christmas holiday and beyond during this season. And I could ask a bazillion of you your favorite films, and you may have a bazillion different answers. But if you look at the top ranked holiday films in places like Entertainment Weekly or the American Film Institute, there's about a dozen or so that rise to the top of the list, including one that has become a classic, and that's It's a Wonderful Life with Jimmy Stewart. Today we're going to spend some time talking to Manning Franks, no relation. Manning Franks is a North Carolina film critic, and I was talking to him a while back about practically perfect films and what did he consider a practically perfect film. And It's a Wonderful Life was his film that he wanted to chat about. So we're going to bring you selections from that dialogue today as we explore the Christmas classic, as it's known to become now, It's a Wonderful Life.
Yeah, so you still think killing yourself would make everyone feel happier, eh?
Oh, I don't know. I guess you're right. I suppose it'd been better if I'd never been born at all.
What'd you say?
I said I wish I'd never been born.
Oh, you mustn't say things like that. Wait a minute. Wait a minute. That's an idea. What do you think? Yeah, that'll do it. All right. You've got your wish. You've never been bored. You don't have to make all that fuss about it.
When we do talk about the film for practically perfect cinema, the one you're going to chat about, It's a Wonderful Life, right here. Got my Life collection of this. So very excited. Look at that. Oh,
I have mine
sweet.
too.
Very sweet. You know, this is a film that was not incredibly successful when it was released back in '46. Right after World War II, audiences. They weren't. This film it's a feel good film, but you got to get through some pretty tough stuff before you get to the feel good stuff, and audiences at that time, they'd been through a lot of hard life, and they didn't seem to want to repeat that. Even though you had Frank Capra, who was a name known for doing amazing work.
And what I find interesting, too, and this is a little fun side tidbit, is that I have still yet to see The Best Years of Our Lives, because that beat it at the Oscars, and I'm still kind of upset about that to this day. I will see it eventually, but, it just goes to show you that I remember there was, that was, I guess, its big rival at the time, because you're coming fresh off of, people are coming down from the war, World War II, and so they are at this point, this is a very specific film. It's a Wonderful Life. It's based off of The Greatest Gift, which I find interesting because, it has been a book or a short story, whatever you call it. It has been one that has, I've forgotten about it. People have forgotten about it, and It's a Wonderful Life has stood the test of time. But at the time, it was just kind of, it barely, I don't even think it made its budget back, if I'm correct, or barely made it back.
Yeah. I think you're right. Yeah, it was not a box office success, but it was a critical success, and I think that's one of the things that helped it have longevity. Of course, getting recognized with awards or award nominations as well. That always will keep films historically significant.
And especially, I believe it got one special award for the snow that they did. I will never forget that. It won it for making snow believable and losing that crunch. I'll never forget that, because all this time you take something like that for granted back then, which is why I love the sound, the effects, or excuse me, the science behind it, because it's art, but through that art you create something as cool as, let's make practical snow that's not actually, snow, or will provide some sort of artificial crunch.
Right, so let's add that kind of Foley, that sound design to bring it to life. Yeah, it was pretty innovative at the time. So here's the overarching question, just kind of the big picture
Yes.
question. What is it about this film that you feel makes it practically perfect? And it is so much so that you do have a poster hanging behind you. That it is something that, it's definitely something that you want people to know that you appreciate.
It's a Wonderful Life is timeless. It is timeless in story and execution. It is simple yet incredibly effective with how it may take and strike, and it may take something as broad and as almost fable-like as the American Dream, and show that, hey, even if you don't have it all, you still can make an impact in your life and the lives of others that you come into contact with. It's a message that I think can resonate to this day. And I think Capra, in his beautiful schmaltzy way, because he is a director of schmaltz and I love him for it, he does a phenomenal job in just making this picture. I don't know when he was making it, he was like, oh, generations are going to be watching this. But he does it in a way where anyone can watch this from the first frame into the very last, right when those bells ring. It is one that I think stands the test of time for its universal timelessness.
Yeah, it is one of those films that it has now become a Christmas classic over the years. That's
Right.
That's far exceeded. I really think it's far exceeded what Capra ever thought. I mean, when it was released in '46.
What's happening? It stopped snowing out here, didn't it? Well, what's happening here? What I need's a couple of good stiff drinks. How about you, Angel? You want a drink? Come on, as soon as these clothes of ours are dry.
Clothes are dry.
Wouldn't know
I
about
think
that.
more people have seen it on TV than ever saw it in the theater. But I'm pretty sure it was Ted Turner that really found a way to kind of bring this to life on TV over and over and over again, because the copyright, fell that nobody had the copyrights to it.
Dear Father in heaven, I'm not a praying man, but if you're up there and you can hear me, show me the way. I'm at the end of my rope, right? Show me the way, oh God.
And going back to that short story, The Greatest Gift, Philip Van Doren Stern put this together, and it was loosely based on Dickens' Christmas Carol, which was also free for anybody to take advantage of and kind of create their own version of it. So it's kind of interesting that this one almost fell into that same kind of category.
It's a Wonderful Life is, as I mentioned before, the timelessness. It's also at its heart, it's a story that is about a man who is practically a man who has vision, a man who has dreams, who in his mind becomes a nobody. And by any stretch of the imagination, he is a nobody to anyone outside of Bedford Falls. They don't know his name. His brother gets all the fame usually, and most individuals who escape beyond the town they are successful, really, except in his mind, he's really not. And by the time we get to the end of the story, it's like almost when we get to the end of life ourselves. We think, who have we impacted? What have we done? And I think there's something incredibly powerful, especially within those last 30 minutes, that, as I'd mentioned before, resonates even with us today, because I feel like many a times in life we wonder, what impact have we had upon the lives of others? And George Bailey, and kind of, this is the 1940s. I don't know if people were really talking about, at that time, the legacy that they really have created in such a cultural way, and also discussing the idea of mental health in that time, because this is a man who was genuinely struggling at that time. And they talked about some deep themes like, suicide, depression,
Yes.
and going through something as deep and dark as that, and being able to express that in a way where you get to see a really novel. It's not novel. I mean, people think about all the time, what would life be like if I wasn't around? And through that, Frank Capra, through this adaptation of The Greatest Gift, shows us in a way, and also James Stewart. I'll talk about him in a second. This is so good. But do this in a way where I think it's ahead of its time, but it's also, and I go back to it again, timeless. and it's a great combination when you're right in between timely and timeless, you know?
Yes, yes, and it's a movie that almost didn't happen for several reasons, and the short story is almost something that didn't happen as well because Stern. The short story is not that long; it's 4,000 plus words, give or take. So it is a short story, and he could not find a publisher to bring this to life from a printing standpoint. So he decided to kind of self-publish. And put the story inside of Christmas cards he sent out to family and friends. So there were originally 200 copies printed, and it was a 21-page Christmas card is basically what it ended up being. And Capra was one of those that had gotten wind of this and really wanted to be a part of it. And Capra's, the studio he was wanting to work with didn't really happen, so he kind of created his own independent production company, Liberty Films, and decided to adapt it. So it's interesting how the short story that almost didn't happen was almost the movie that didn't happen. And here we are, decades later, several decades later, still talking about this. And you mentioned Jimmy Stewart. Stewart, he was one of America's leading actors at that time, and 28 films I think prior to this. Best Oscar for The Philadelphia Story, and he was actually in World War II, so it was interesting him coming back to the screen again.
And that's really cool because, when you find out just the history of what he did of being a pilot himself during World War II and how I'd love to know what he took from that, because I know he was a very private person. He didn't really talk too much about himself and what his life was like outside of the screen. But I'd love to see what he brought into that. And what I mentioned about James Stewart beforehand, there is something so Jimmy Stewart. Jimmy Stewart, I loved watching him as a kid, He was, he great voice, iconic voice. He's in the same camp as, like, Tom Hanks, as I will say. And what I mean by what I mean by that is he is
or Tom Hanks is in the same camp as Jimmy Stewart.
Correct. You're right. Thank you for correcting me, Noel. I appreciate that. But Tom Hanks is in that same category as Jimmy Stewart. And what I mean by that is Jimmy Stewart played himself a lot of the time, in the sense of he never really was a chameleon by, like, transforming like a Daniel Day-Lewis, but that doesn't mean he didn't create such memorable and lasting characters, because he is such a likable everyman. And as much as I love someone like Cary Grant, as much as I love someone like Gary Cooper, they don't have that same everyman quality that Jimmy Stewart had. And what he brings to George Bailey, and even props to the younger actor who played him as well too, but for what Jimmy Stewart brings, this kind of earnest, which the entire film I feel like is very earnest, to be like, hey, this is a wonderful life. Which you think it's one thing until we get to the very end, and he does such a wonderful job of kind of taking the audience on that journey, which I don't think many actors can do or have done, where you takes them on this practical journey, especially back then, because a lot of it was like you were either the Humphrey Bogart, where it was very much like they were just kind of distant. They were the tech detective. They kind of stood away from everyone, or the Cary Grant, who was the quick-witted, very classy individual, where you have someone like James Stewart as George Bailey really shines in this role, where he plays very multifaceted from the man with lots of dreams to the man of broken dreams. And the line I was going to say is the very end, and this is kind of like what I think is this encompasses what the message of It's a Wonderful Life really is. And it's at the very end, when he's at the actual bridge, and he says, I want to live again, please God, let me live again. And it's obviously he's saying, I want to live again to Clarence. But if you look at back in perspective of, like, to him, living was going away from Bedford Falls. In this case, now staying in Bedford Falls to him is just simply living. And it's such a beautiful character study about a man who thought he wanted one thing, but ended up realizing he really had, roll the credits, It's a Wonderful Life.
Yes, it's wonderful news. For when all these wonderful people get into the swim, it's a wonderful life. For never before has any film contained such a full measure of the joy of living, the drama of living, and above all, the glorious romance that makes this such a wonderful life.
Don't you ever get tired of just reading about things?
Yeah. Hey, what are you doing tonight? I don't want to get married to anybody, you understand? I want to do what I want to do. And you...
Won't you come and meet me at the movies? Won't you come and watch a flick?
Greetings from the CCC Foundation. We're proud to support CCC students, faculty and staff through scholarships and support for academics, workforce training, and Yeti athletics. Thank you for your strong support in 2023. We wish you a joyful holiday and a bright new year.
I will send out an army to find you in the middle of the darkest night. It's true, I will rescue you. Oh, I will rescue you.
Won't you come and meet me at the movies? Won't you come and watch a
What did you
flick?
say just a minute ago? Why'd you want to save me?
That's what I was sent down for. I'm your guardian angel.
I wouldn't be a bit surprised.
Ridiculous of you to think of killing yourself for money. $8,000.
Yeah, now just things like that. Now, how do you know that?
I told you I'm your guardian angel. I know everything about you.
Well, you look about like the kind of an angel I'd get. Sort of a fallen angel, aren't you? What happened to your wings?
I haven't won my wings yet. That's why I'm an angel second class.
I think that is so much about life. You know, you hear this phrase said over and over again, and that sometimes you don't know what you have until you've lost it or until it's gone.
Yeah.
However you interpret that, and sometimes it really is that looking back at what could have been or what should have been or what was, and realizing, you know, that was what I really had was pretty dang good. You know,
Yeah.
pretty dang good compared, especially when it's about perspective. And I've always loved the Christmas Carol story, going
Yeah.
back to the original that this was based on. If we're going to talk about the loosely based and the original base with Charles Dickens, but the Charles Dickens version, that's one of those stories that we continue to see play out. Every year there's a new version of Ebenezer Scrooge, whether you call him Scrooge or you call him Frank Cross, like, you know, Scrooged,
Yes.
the Donner film. But there's something special about that people can change, and people sometimes forget the good times because the bad times can overshadow them. Or the potential bad times can overshadow them. And even when we're in those bad times, it doesn't mean they're going to be forever. It doesn't mean they're going to be permanent. I think this movie and even the stories of the Ebenezer Scrooge stories, I mean, the really strong ones kind of share that, and they allow you to kind of look inside yourself and put yourself into that story and think about times that maybe you've had loss, or maybe you've had hurt, or maybe you've lost a job, or maybe you've tried to help others and you haven't been able to fulfill what you feel was the best that you could do. But maybe it was given your circumstances.
That happened because it's Christmas Eve, I'm telling you. I'm not crazy. It's Christmas Eve. It's the one night of the year when we all act a little nicer. We smile a little easier. We share a little more. For a couple of hours out of the whole year, we are the people that we always hoped we would be. It's a miracle. It's really a sort of a miracle because it happens every Christmas Eve.
And that's wow, you're gonna make me cry over here. No, I was gonna say no. I mean that sincerely because I had mentioned earlier on is that my dad showed me cinema. My dad lost his battle to cancer a few years ago, and I guess I have a new appreciation because we always watch It's a Wonderful Life on Christmas Eve. It's a tradition in my house where we watch it every year, and there is such a deeper appreciation that I have for this movie. Is it a perfect film? Well, it's practically perfect, I will have to say.
Yeah.
But as you say, you're right. We'll all go through something in life, and I think that at its pure core, from a technical standpoint, yes, they did some really ingenious things, but It's a Wonderful Life is about the character of George Bailey and those that he touches around his life. And as a character study, as I mentioned prior, that's where it really succeeds. Yes, Frank Capra is, Frank Capra, of course, but it all comes together. And It's a Wonderful Life is almost a reflection, I feel like, of the human condition in a way. As I said before, timely and timeless at the same time. And yeah, it's a beautiful film because it manages to do so much with what that short story was and expanding that into this film that has, take that, Best Years of Our Lives. Wonderful Life has lasted the test of time to where it's now a classic every Christmas. Of course, the Christmas isn't really a part of the best years of our lives, but still.
Strange, isn't it? Each man's life touches so many other lives. And when he isn't around, he leaves an awful hole, doesn't he?
And it was a film that was truly actually rushed into theaters. Originally, they wanted to release it in January, and it was released in December. Not rushed tremendously, but it was rushed a little early in order to kind of get under that Oscar deadline just in case, because Stewart was back. And it did get a Best Picture nomination, director, lead actor with James Stewart, sound and editing. And then you mentioned that special Oscar that it got as well. And the editing, and that's what, when I look at that, and I look at what artistically was celebrated with this film, critically, absolutely, it is worthy and worthy of standing the test of time. Because if you're talking about sound and editing, direction, picture, and acting, that the only thing really left out of that from anything is the cinematography, and it does have incredible cinematography as well. Though it's a beautifully shot film that brings you in, and some of those scenes are just and so much of that does go to Jimmy Stewart. Just how you said he's that everyman who is authentic, and he makes you believe what he's feeling and what he's sharing and what he is experiencing. And I tell you, that is that's not method acting. That's just being a true, let me breathe it and live it. And he does that.
And in addition, you'd mentioned prior, too, that yes, it's all can be about the director, the acting, and the screenwriting. We talked about almost everything but the cinematography. Well, also, again, I want to mention the editing as well, too. This isn't like a short hour, 30, 45-minute movie. Yeah. This is a longer Christmas movie. Yes. You got to sit down and commit to that. And I say that in the best way possible because it's over 2 hours. This one works so well because, the editing, it doesn't feel overtly long. And by the time you realize that Clarence, but they're over there kind of giving us kind of like an overview of the story, a recap, and when you get to the actual moment where it's in real time, you realize, wait a minute, I spent all this time, I didn't even remember that this is where we're going. So the editing by William Hornbeck is, I think, honestly great. He did Giant as well, too, Raisin in the Sun. I love editing, so it's he is someone who I think is genuinely, I don't know how many Oscars he got nominated for, but he probably wasn't enough. He did such a good job of making this so move at a such brisk pace. And yes, there are montages, but then there are scenes that breathe. The scene with George and any scene with basically George and then Mary when they first see each other after I think the party. That entire scene is excellent. And to this day, I'm like, how did some of this make it out of the 1940s? Because this is some stuff that over here that would be like, wow, okay, the scene of he's making violent love to me, mother? Okay.
Right,
okay.
Exactly. Exactly.
Tension, even back then. Donna Reed, she does a great job, by the way. She carries her own with Jimmy Stewart.
Yeah, and Lionel Barrymore as Henry Potter,
yes.
know.
Vile.
Exactly.
Love him.
Exactly. Yeah, you believed he was despicable in every practically perfect way.
Yes, exactly.
It is such a beautiful, wonderful film to talk about, and that's why we continue to talk about it year in and year out.
Clarence! Clarence! Help me, Clarence! Get me back! Get me back! I don't care what happens to me! Get me back to my wife and kids! Help me, Clarence, please! Please! I want to live again! I want to live again! I want to live again. Please, God, let me live again.
Because Wonderful Life, to me, while there are a lot of technical merits, it succeeds the most when you get down into the human element of the story. The very practically, I'm not going to say it, the real practical side of the human condition, of discussing human nature and just seeing what George Bailey, and just serving the story for the character of George Bailey. And it's still, to me, he's one of my favorite cinematic characters of all time because of his relatability, but also because of his vulnerability and the way that he can inspire just a generation. Is it schmaltzy and is it kind of over the top at times? Sure, but it's a Christmas movie. It's also an inspirational movie. It's a movie that you can watch outside of Christmas too, which is also a powerful thing to be able to say. And I just wanted to end my closing thoughts by just saying it is a personal movie to me, as I know that you said that I'm the cinematier. Is that correct? Is that what it is?
That's it. Yeah, the cinematier.
I will take it. But I don't want to ever gatekeep this film because it is such a classic overall for so many people's lives. I have a friend this is one of his favorite films for a personal aspect. This is a very personal film because of how it speaks to us as humans. And while I can go on about some of the technical aspects of the cinematography, the editing, at its core, Wonderful Life succeeds the best when it gets down to who George Bailey is, who Mary Bailey is, who Uncle Billy is, who Mr. Potter is. He's horrible, and we love him for it. Lionel Barrymore, great. But it is just an overall beautiful film, and I am honored that I got the chance to be able to express the love that it means for me as a person, but what it could mean for lots of other people.
Again, I'd like to thank Manning Franks for spending time with us talking about his practically perfect film choice, It's a Wonderful Life, quite appropriate for us to talk about during this season. I do hope that you have a wonderful holiday season from all of us here at Meet Me at the Movies. We just want to say thank you for taking the time to be with us, and we encourage you to spend time with family and friends, and hope you can find peace and comfort and love during this Christmas season. Until next time, for Meet Me at the Movies, I'm Noel T. Manning II.